YouTube, what it do tube. Daily output on Dre Day. And it's a continuation of conversation between Tucker Carlson and Victor Hanson. Victor Davis Hanson, let's say it all correctly. But let's get back into it. Pretty close to where I left off.
The entire Congress, and there won't be any redress of grievances. I don't see it, but I don't think they will because they don't have any popular support. Every single one of Joe Biden's issues, economy, crime, energy, foreign policy, the border, he's polling 30 or 40%. And the only way they're retaining power is through the legal system and the administrative state and our institutions, media, entertainment, sports, education, K through 12, universities. And it's kind of an artificial way of getting power without popular consent. And that's why I think you were right on when you said they don't believe in democracy. In fact, op-ed writers in the New York Times will say that now, that democracy is a flawed idea, because it doesn't any longer ensure the result that they have to have. Like
I said, it's been a while since I've been in school. Well, maybe 2 years, 3 years. Didn't have too many geography classes or history classes. But I thought we were based on a constitutional democracy. I'll pull up a video about that later on.
good Bolsheviks or good Jacobins, they eventually always turn on elections. They don't want them. And so we'll see. It's going to be a very explosive. I hope everybody can keep their head, because I think the next 12 to 18 months are going to be the most explosive in our history since the Great Depression.
Do you think Trump is leading now? What do you think would happen if 11 months from now Trump were still leading?
Yeah, well, we're on chartered. We have no idea about this election, Tucker, because first of all, we've never had a president running against an ex-president, number one. Number two, we've never had an incumbent president that is utterly corrupt, like Joe Biden, and has lost all of his, or most of his cognitive facilities, and is very unpopular. And yet we've never had a challenger who has been the victim of lawfare and is facing 91 indictments. And every time people say they wouldn't dare do this. Fannie Willis wouldn't dare. Letitia James is just an absurd prosecutor. She wouldn't dare. Alvin Bragg is a buffoon. He wouldn't dare. Jack Smith is a partisan. Every time people say that, they do. And so I don't know if there's a strategy to keep Donald Trump either out of a gag order or out of confinement at Mar-a-Lago or out of jail. So you can see where we're headed to, where Joe Biden isn't really a viable president anymore. He's a construct. He's being used by the hard left, by the Obamas and the Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders squad wing of the Democratic Party. And it's getting to the point of caricature. So you put all of those things together and add in a Kamala Harris that frightens everybody, because we've never had such an incompetent vice president, I think, and one so unfit to be president. And everything, all bets are off. It's like putting a group, all sorts of ingredients of explosive into a kind of device, and it's going to blow up, I think, somehow. But I don't think we can predict what's going to happen. It's just too volatile. I think the left feels that they want to push the envelope. They want to take the leading Republican candidate and they want to create charges against him, which they know they would have never lodged had he just said, I don't want to run for president. They would have let him alone. So these are patently political, and they want to destroy him psychologically, financially, and of course politically. And they think they can get away with it without a pushback, and we'll see. And so I think the other candidates are going to be, I don't know what their line should be, Tucker, but I think it should be, if you want to vote for me, I am going to be viable, and I'm going to make sure that they never do to Donald Trump what they're doing now, and I'm in a better position to help Trump than he is. That's the only, I think, legitimate argument to make, that this involves everybody. And if you're going to run for president and you feel that you embrace the MAGA agenda, you should say that I will not be in jail. I won't be exposed to the same degree. And if I can survive, I will change the system and make sure Donald Trump is exonerated and no one else has to face this. But otherwise, it's going to be a very complex, bizarre, baffling period. I don't think the founders had, this is their worst nightmare, 2023-24.
I don't even think you'd have to support Trump's agenda or Trump the man to see this as an assault on a centuries-old system that's worked better than any other. And I wonder why almost nobody in Washington seems to see that or be willing to say it out loud.
Yeah, the only question I have about that is I don't know why they did not go to the same extremes. They did go to extremes against McCain and Romney, etc. But there was something about Trump, his personality, that was an affront to the bicoastal standard of, I don't know, what they thought was acceptable or desirable, or it was his agenda. When they looked at the particular MAGA agenda and they said, my God, we have sizable investments in China and they are our partner, they're not an existential threat, this is really scary. Or we have this idea of global ecumenicalism, we can't have a border anymore, and this guy wants to bring back a border. Or we have this idea that how we look or our race is essential, not incidental to who we are. And he would want to bring back this crazy melting pot and destroy the entire woke movement. So I think it did represent to them a DEFCON 1, and they said, we can't have this. And it would have been all right, Tucker, had he been a third party Ross Perot. They dealt with people like that in the past, and they'd already been able to handle them. But he won the Republican nomination, got elected, and now he wants to be back. And they just said, we're going to do everything possible, and we're going to even reject our prior democratic liberal heritage of, ACLU, free speech, and transparency, and the church committee investing. All of that's off the table. We don't want to do any of that anymore. We're going to do anything necessary to destroy this guy's vision and the other candidates who share his vision. Because if we don't, we're going to go back to an America that we didn't like when it was there, we don't like now, and we sure as hell don't want it to be an America in the future like that.
They're trying to throw the kitchen sink at him. But will he prevail? We'll see. It's going to be a crazy 2024, I can tell you that.
I think even people who are skeptical of the claim that the last election was unfair or rigged have concluded that it was in fact unfair, and the federal agencies got involved in a partisan way. It was not a free and fair election. Given that system is still in place, you think it's possible for a Republican or Trump specifically to get elected in 2024?
It's very difficult. What the left did was absolutely brilliant, Tucker. They seized on this Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, Kraken, Dominion voting machines as representative of all of the questions about the election, when most people said the election was lost by the time we got to election day.
Yeah.
Because 70% of the voters had voted not on election day, and that never happened in American history. It was always 30% absentees, 70% in most states on election day. But they systematically used COVID as an excuse and went into about 9 states and changed the voting laws. And I mean by that the error rate for mail-in ballots dropped exponentially as the rejection rate did, as they were swarmed by them. And they were bragging about it. Mark Zuckerberg was bragging about spending $419 million to absorb the work of precinct workers in key states. Molly Ball, as you remember in that Time essay, just gushed about how they had outsmarted these stupid conservatives, and they had coordinated the Chamber of Commerce, the street people, Antifa, etc., to modulate the demonstrations and to suppress free speech. And when Twitter is being controlled by the FBI to the tune of $3 million being paid off for their own contractors to suppress streets, or Google is manipulating searches and ads and everything. That's what destroyed the viability of a fair election. It was done before election day, and we were all asleep, or some of us, I know you were yelling about it, I was trying to yell about it, but we couldn't get through to anybody that they would be that audacious or that successful. Nobody thought they were capable of that, and yet they were.
So why have Republicans in Washington done nothing meaningful to fix any of that?
I think the traditional answer to that is probably accurate, that there's a culture that is created, and it's kind of a lose nobly, avoid winning ugly, profit both financially and psychologically, the status quo, and they feel that their own constituents, some of the Republican constituents, are kind of out there and an embarrassment to the type of culture and environment that that they operate in Washington. And so the sense is, I'm not going to be too affected by the left-wing takeover because I know I can make the necessary adjustments in a way that my constituents can't. And so I think there's sometimes in the case of somebody like Mitch McConnell, it can be overt, but in other cases it's pretty clear as well. And that's been going on for a long time. And the problem we're having now is that you need leaders who are trying to tell people we are in a Jacobin takeover of this country, and the old get along at any cost does not work. And I don't think people want that disruption in their comfortable lives in Washington. I mean, if you say to somebody in the Republican establishment, you've got to break up the FBI, you've got to take the headquarters and put it in Kansas City and farm out the divisions to other cabinet posts to prevent that concentration of really dangerous power. You've got to do something with the CIA. You've got to do something with the DOJ. We've got to have massive legal reforms. I don't think they're up to that. I really don't. I don't think they're up to being trashed in the Washington Post or the New York Times, or not being invited to a particular guest spot on a network news, or being shunned by NPR and PBS. They're just not up to that, or having their books trashed by book reviewers on the left. They don't want that. There's a few that do, but until we get a lot of people who say, you on the left culturally have nothing that I want, and so when you hate us and call me names and you lie about, I take that as a badge of honor. I don't try to provoke you. I want to get along with you, but you have no cultural influence over me anymore, and I'm going to be an advocate for returning to the country to the principles upon which it was founded. I think that's what people want to hear, and I think in 2024 they'll hear that, and they're going to have to, each person according to their station, Tucker, stand up, give money to the cause, write letters to the paper, volunteer to work at precincts, monitor what the left is doing with mail-in ballots. And you're starting to see that grassroots interest, but the question is, will it be in time and of a magnitude that will stop this?
So, to the hearing today in New York, the civil case against Trump, my read of it is that it's ridiculous. The premise is absurd. Am I missing something? Is there any merit, do you think, just as objectively as you can, to this suit?
Well, I mean, in a larger sense, no, because you can ask yourself two questions. Would Letitia James and the people who were doing this, would they have done it if Donald Trump on January 7th said, conditions have changed, I'm now not going to run for office? I think the answer is no. And then the second thing, are some of the giants of New York finance and real estate, do they operate in a way that is completely different than Donald Trump? They never overvalue an asset, and I think the answer is no. And then the third question might be, now that you've picked on Donald Trump, are you going to systematically look at the bank applications and loan applications of, say, 50 or 60 of the largest developers in New York, especially on the left-wing side? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, and especially you made a good point that the bank is not filing suit and saying we lost all of its money. And then we have to juxtapose it, Tucker, to what we're witnessing on the other side with somebody like Sam Bankman-Fried, that was put on house arrest on the Stanford campus. We now know about his parents, two renowned Stanford law professors that were grifting off their own son and siphoning money from his company as it was collapsing, which was a big bundler and provider of millions of dollars for the Democratic Party. And nobody in the Democratic Party seems to be upset about him. And then we have Hunter Biden looking right, and we're looking at this, and you want to ask Letitia James, are you really going to do anything, or do you think that Joe Biden should face consequences for again and again and again telling the American people he had no knowledge or participation in any of Hunter's business when you know that was untrue, and money was coming to his address? And so it's a very strange time, Tucker, when you have all this evidence, both to exonerate Donald Trump because of this asymmetrical treatment and the fact that there was no damage, but also when you're looking at Hunter Biden or Menendez and all these people, and you think, how can they, with a straight face, tell us that there's not a shred of evidence that Hunter and Joe were acting in an illegal fashion? And the President of the United States, as we talk, you and I are talking right now, the President of the United States is pretty clearly, as Vice President, was utterly corrupt and has never accounted for that. And nobody on the left cares about it. More importantly, the judiciary or the prosecutorial arm of the United States government is protecting him.
Let me ask you one last question. So I want to put up a clip of, as you know, there's a lot going on, and no matter what side you're on, I think any aware person sees that this is a revolution. Our most basic systems are changing, for good or bad. And yet the news coverage, I mean, not only is it partisan, it's also incredibly shallow. Here's MSNBC's coverage of the civil trial in New York, the case against Donald Trump. One clip of it.
As of this order, several of the crown jewels in Trump's real estate empire, the properties upon which he built his brand, those properties are now in limbo. The precise impact of today's ruling has yet to be seen, but Trump could lose control of properties including Trump Park Avenue, which is his luxury skyscraper in Manhattan's Lenox Hill neighborhood. He could lose control of 40 Wall Street, the historic tower Trump owns in the financial district. He could lose control of his Seven Springs Golf Club in Bedford, New York. Even his apartment in Trump Tower, the Gilded Bunker, in which he has sought refuge in his home city. Trump could lose control of that. Maybe even the Golden Toilet, too.
So here they're going after this guy on the basis of a non-crime. They're not even alleging that there was a crime or that anyone was hurt. And they're taking his home and his businesses, and MSNBC's coverage is that?
Yeah, I mean, what MSNBC just told us is that we are not only fine with, but we promote the idea that government can go into a business, all of the business, and appropriate it and destroy it without cause. And we think that's not only good, but funny, because we're going to throw a little fillip about a golden toilet. Ha ha. And the idea is that we now have the power to do this, and because we have the power to do it, it's moral and right. And if you don't like it, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
And the answer is, what are we going to do about it? And the only thing that I can think of is we're going to have to humiliate and defeat these people at the polls. I don't think it's going to work, Tucker, to win the Electoral College and one branch of Congress. You're going to have a 55% presidential win, both supermajority in the Congress, to get anything done. We've come so far. And you're going to have to defeat them and humiliate them the way that we did it once with Reagan, and it lasted for about 8 years. But this leftist revolutionary spirit is like rust after a rain, or it's mushrooms in your lawn. It's always there, and you can't allow it to grow and to expand and accelerate as we have. We've been complacent and culpable for allowing it to do so in the universities and all of our institutions. And I think now everybody, according to their station, is going to have to say, you know what, There are two pronouns. I don't care if you get angry. This was, the date of this country is 1776. Got it? That's what it is. And there is a border, and we're going to enforce it. And just say no to all of these things, and then welcome the opprobrium and the attacks that accrue accordingly, and wear that as a badge of honor. Because what's the alternative? There is no alternative unless you want to see the United States dissipate before your very eyes.
Yes. Yeah. And living in Naples with no TV will not save you. That is exactly right. The incomparable Victor Davis Hanson, thank you.
No.
This wasn't the video I was actually looking for, but they go on to talk about what are the possibilities of the current president and former president actually making it to 2024 to run off against each other, but I'm going to have to locate that video. I'd rather have that video play with them saying it before somebody says, oh, such and such is saying this on YouTube, but I'm looking for that video, and they're kind of right about the schools because, like I said in previous videos, I graduated college. I'm a late bloomer. Right before the pandemic, and I said a positive thing about Trump at the time, and the teacher almost had a conniption fit. He was from MIT, Georgia, I believe that's where it's at. But kind of paraded me around, telling me reasons why I shouldn't like him, blah blah blah, things of that nature. But it's embedded in schools, I could tell you that for sure. But yeah. But this has been a daily output. I'm Dre. Y'all stay tuned. I got some more videos and articles dropping later on.